Sure, season-long fantasy football is great, but you know what's equally awesome? Making money weekly. And that's our goal on the brand new Fantasy Football Today DFS podcast. Join me, Frank Stanfill, alongside DFS analysts Mike McClure and Sia Najad twice a week for the most well-rounded analysis in the industry. Download and follow Fantasy Football Today DFS wherever podcasts are found.
Freaking first cut. Golly.
Welcome to the First Cut Podcast. I'm Rick Gaiman, and this is your DFS preview for this week's BMW Championship. And joining me to break it all down, it is Sia Najad. Sia, welcome to the rare Tuesday DFS preview record.
Yeah, you know, everything kind of went swimmingly yesterday, as it turns out, other than things getting pushed back. I enjoyed Monday Golf. The winner didn't go my way necessarily, but I know a lot of people celebrated the Tony Finau win. But I'm happy to be doing this on a Tuesday. I'm fired up.
We're actually going to open, it's a little bit laid back this week. We're going to open it up. Sia and I going through the board. If you have some questions, some comments, some concerns, whatever you have, throw them in the chat. We'll try to make this a little bit interactive if you are following along on YouTube right now, because we are absolutely live. While you're there, you might as well hit that thumbs up. You might as well leave us a 5-star rating and review on iTunes. Costs you nothing. And that's our currency, Sia. That's what we work with. So it is always much appreciated.
Yeah, and it takes literally 1 second to do. So let's do it, folks.
All right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to share my screen right now. Everything that you see will be from my site, rickrungood.com. And Sia, let's talk course out of the gate, because that is really the big unknown. Caves Valley Golf Club, it's par 72. It's fairly long, over 7,500 yards in Baltimore, Maryland. And this is the first time we've seen it. Combine that with the fact that most of the players got there a day late. And how do we quickly assess this course? And how do the players on the grounds quickly assess this course?
So we got a par 72, 7,500 yards. I think everybody sort of agrees at this point that it is going to be a birdie fest. So I think we don't need to worry about precision as much off the tee. For one, I think off the tee is going to be important, but I think the distance part of that is going to be more critical than the accuracy. And, the approach is obviously going to be important. I don't think around the green is going to be that important, in spite of the fact that these greens are relatively small. Rick, you may disagree with me there. But with that said, I'm looking for birdie makers. We talked about it at the first look show yesterday. I'm really looking for BOB gain, BOB percentage, and go from there.
I kind of agree with you. So I think in general, anytime you get the 4 guaranteed rounds, the birdie makers are important. Guys like Cam Davis, who can make a lot of birdies, make a lot of eagles. I think he leads the tour in eagles. That's why I brought him up, because you get more opportunities. Those bonuses kind of go a long way. And I don't think it's going to be that easy, though. I just have the way that they pinch these fairways in to some points at like 25 yards. The pictures that I've seen early, I think the rough is fairly hairy. I think you could be into some issues here. I don't know. And then we heard the comments from Jordan Spieth saying this is kind of risk reward, which generally can lead to higher scores. It can also lead to lower scores. I'm not sold on this necessarily being a birdie fest for 4 rounds.
So I'll tell you this, and unfortunately, because we don't have history here, it's really hard to definitively say, well, this is what it's going to be. But with that said, I have heard some things from people sort of on the ground, and this is a little bit secondhand, I'll admit, but most of the people that I've seen that have actually been on this course, played this course, are saying it's really gettable, especially when it comes to, you might have a couple of drivable par 4s, the par 5s. I think we're looking at a lot of potential eagles here too. So I think it's going, I don't know. We're splitting hairs a little bit here, because you might be suggesting, Rick, well, maybe the winning score is minus 14 or 15. And I might be saying, well, maybe it's minus 19 or 20. So, either way, I think it's going to be in the double digits. And I think you are going to have a lot of scoring opportunities.
Okay, so that kind of leads to the question that we're kind of having here. David in the chat is bringing it up. Are we thinking distance is more important than accuracy? I tend to think it might be, distance everywhere is a benefit, right? It doesn't matter if it's Pebble Beach where everybody's hitting from the same spot, because when you hit from the same spot, you're hitting a shorter club in. So distance is always important, but I think I tend to lean towards accurate golfers, and I'm not sure we're going to agree on that.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to agree there. I'm going to go, and again, it's, we're speculating to some degree, but I have looked at some of the flyover stuff or some of the images too. Honestly, Rick, maybe not as extensively as you. I don't see it. And from what I'm hearing, I don't see it as super penal if you're wayward. And so I think you're going to be okay. Obviously, these are smaller greens. You're going to want to have your shot in the fairway to hit them. But at the same time, I just think length, and this is an unusual take for me because I'm usually the accuracy guy, but I think it's going to be distance for me.
And David's follow-up question is, what is the last Fazio design? I believe that was Congaree off the top of my head. I'll have to confirm that, but I'm pretty sure it was Congaree. Let's go look at the cheat sheet here, Sia. And we're down to 69 golfers because Patrick Reed is gone. He has withdrawn. Double pneumonia for Mr. Reed. And there is no cut this week. So the 4 guaranteed rounds we mentioned, the fields continue to stay incredibly strong because of the nature of these events and how you have to qualify into them. And it leads to a massive $10,000 range. Jon Rahm, 11,700. Xander Schauffele, 11,100. Jordan Spieth is 10,800. Justin Thomas is 10,600. The bottom 3 are Dustin Johnson at 10,400. Brooks Koepka, 10,200. And Colin Morikawa, friend of the pod, at an even $10,000. Do you just want to start with the Jon Rahm discussion here? Is that what we have to figure out? Yeah, we have to figure out to Rahm or not to Rahm, I think, is the first question we have to ask ourselves.
So I'll say this, in building some preliminary lineups, I do think the pricing's pretty soft, and you might expect that. We have, I don't want to say that the top 69 players in the world, but certainly, you can go down to the 6K range and find some really good golfers. I think a lot of the value ends at the 7K range, but with that said, you can stack a lot of 7K guys and be perfectly fine with taking an expensive Jon Rahm. So I don't think I'm going to be off Jon Rahm per se. I mean, I didn't really like what I saw on the back 9 yesterday, but again, I mean, for however many rounds it was, 60 rounds, or I should say 60 holes, he was dominant. I mean, I genuinely think he was dominant. He just had a tough time. I think the putter got into his head a little bit. I think he got a little frustrated, and then things kind of unraveled from there. And frankly, Tony Finau kind of came out and got it too. I mean, Cam Smith had a chance there too, but Tony Finau eagling down the stretch there. I mean, he kind of got after it. So while Jon Rahm probably lost it, I think Tony Finau and Cam Smith really stepped up. So I'm okay with Jon Rahm. I don't love this range. And so I like Jon Rahm, I like Xander, and I like Justin Thomas. Other than that, I'm just not interested.
Oh man, we are off to a start, man. I think we're going to disagree quite a bit here today. It might be good, it might be bad. Listen, I think I'm much more bullish on Jon Rahm and paying the price for it. It is the most expensive he's ever been on DraftKings outside of last year's Tour Championship. But remember, with the Tour Championship and the starting strokes, you get a really huge range of salaries. I think Justin Thomas one year was like $15,500. So I usually exclude that. So this is basically the most expensive that Jon Rahm has ever been. And I think it's worth it. I tweeted this out earlier, since the PGA Championship, guys like Jordan Spieth have been phenomenal. Guys like Colin Morikawa and Louis Oosthuizen have been phenomenal, but it is not even the same planet that Jon Rahm is in, at least in terms of some of the advanced metrics. And you mentioned some of the guys in the 6K range that we're going to get to. I'm happy to play those guys. So I have a lot of lineups, I believe, that are going to start with Rahm. Who are the other 2 guys that you were interested in?
Justin Thomas and Xander. I mean,
Okay.
there are flaws there, by the way. Although, let me just start with Xander. His off the tee game really hasn't been up to par, so to speak, in the last few tournaments. So that is a little bit of a concern. But he's doing everything else really well. I mean, his approach game has been immaculate, and I just think he's sort of like I'm not so worried about the off the tee because he's not like getting killed on it. He's just sort of out of sorts a little bit. If he corrects that, I mean, I really could see him flashing. As far as Justin Thomas is concerned, Rick, I just think he's about to pop. Yes. I think he's ready, and I think we're about to see it. I think he really kind of gears up towards FedEx Cup season, playoff season, if you will. And I think we're seeing glimpses of it. And so I'm more willing now to take Justin Thomas, whereas if you asked me 1, 2, 3 months ago, he wouldn't have been on my radar.
Yeah, JT, he foreshadows it. He shows you it's coming, and he's showing us it's coming right now. And the last 3 starts have been much more vintage Justin Thomas, +2, +6, +4 on approach. That is what you want to see. He's certainly not going to gain 4.5 strokes putting like he did at the Northern Trust, but he's probably not going to lose 5 like he did in Memphis, right? He's going to come in somewhere in between that, which is generally fine. So I agree with you. This is a really good blueprint for Justin Thomas. What do you make of Collin Morikawa? Because let me set the table for you here. We know the upside. We know the winning. We know how great he is. We found out that he did tweak something in Tokyo, and you can see, I mean, you can literally see it in the metrics, man. Mm-hmm. It's absolutely unbelievable. This is a guy who in his young career has never lost strokes on approach in back-to-back weeks. He has now been 0 or worse for 3 in a row, obviously because of that injury. How do you approach the flat $10,000 Collin Morikawa this week?
There's just too much talent here for me to say I'm willing to overlook. Like the back injury, I don't know how significant it is, but I know those strokes gained approach stats are pretty significant, at least relative to what he normally is. So I'm completely off Collin Morikawa. I have no issue either pivoting down to the 9K range or pivoting up to like the Jon Rahm, Xanders, or Justin Thomases.
I'm very excited to see what his ownership is going to be because from what I understand, the back injury led to him kind of changing his mechanics a little bit, kind of defending it, which we see all the time with injuries. From what I also understand, I think he's healthy now, and he's just got to get back on track, and he's got a couple of sessions coming up with his coach this week. Maybe the miscut at the Northern Trust was good. I will convince myself, Sia, by Thursday morning that Collin Morikawa will find a way to get into my lineup. So that leaves us with, let's see. We didn't talk about Brooks. Didn't really talk about DJ. I'm kind of off DJ. I just don't particularly see it coming. There's not a lot to like there. Brooks, I could make a case for. And then Spieth had this really weird 73rd place finish where he shot basically 62, 72, 72, almost 82 on Sunday. And the final 2 rounds were some of the worst driving we've seen from him this year. I don't know necessarily how to proceed with that.
It felt like he was sort of in give up mode yesterday. And I know you shouldn't say that about an athlete, but I mean, back-to-back triples and, the par 5s, he was parring, like, there were so many opportunities for him yesterday. And again, I say yesterday, Monday, when the Northern Trust was finishing, it was just puzzling. And to your point, we talked about this on the first look. He did put an excellent round together. And I guess in a no-cut event, it does make sense to go with a guy that can really can put a 62 up on maybe 1 or 2 days. But the other 3 rounds were so unimpressive. Again, when you're at this elite range and you're paying these big prices, to me, it just makes more sense. Like, I think Justin Thomas right now can pop in the same way that Jordan Spieth can. And therefore, seeing what I saw last week, it just makes more sense for me to go to a guy like JT rather than Spieth.
Yeah, I'm generally willing to write off one weird Monday finish round with a day off. I don't really care, but to see what he did over the final 2 rounds with the driver, and that was the one thing that had really held him together this year, I am at the very least proceeding with caution is how I will handle that. Before we get down to the 9K range, let me grab one of these questions from the chat here. This one's from Adam, and it's a one and done question. And see, we don't often get your one and done input, so I want to give you an opportunity here. So Adam's got a plethora of riches. 2 weeks to go. He's got Xander Schauffele, Cam Smith, Harris English, and Hideki Matsuyama. I'd argue he saved too many guys, but that's a different conversation to have. How are you proceeding with those 4 options, Sia, over the next 2 weeks? How would you deploy those?
So are all 4 of those guys a lock to make it to the final 30 is my first question.
Xander, Cam Smith, and Harris English are all inside the top 10, I believe. Almost certainly are. I will have to look up Hideki there.
So assuming Hideki is as well, I actually like Xander for this tournament, even though you might want to, quote, save him for the Tour Championship if you only have these 4 left. But I don't know where you are in the points, but I like Xander.
He's currently in first by $500,000, and Hideki Matsuyama is 16th. Xander is 13th. So all 4 of those guys are inside the top 16.
Yeah, I would go with Xander, even though he's probably the best guy of those 4. I would just ride with somebody else for the final one.
Who would you run out at Eastlake then?
I mean, I would probably say Cam Smith, believe it or not.
Yeah, because he is in third right now. And if you're using the starting strokes, that might be Cam Smith. Okay, good luck, Adam. $9,000 range. Our newly crowned champion, Tony Finau, is at 9,800. Louis Oosthuizen seemingly back. I imagine, Sia, we're going to have to keep an eye on this. He has withdrawn before the start of the Wyndham Championship and the Northern Trust. That's 2 weeks in a row, citing the neck injury. Let's just stop there and put pause right now, because Louis Oosthuizen has been phenomenal. What level of confidence would you have putting him in your lineups, and would you make sure that you have an alarm set for Thursday morning if you do have him in your lineups?
It's tough because you almost feel like he feels like he has to play this tournament, whereas maybe last week he felt like he could rest for one more week, and it just doesn't make me feel very comfortable. I don't think I'm going to be playing him. That's the short answer.
I don't think I will either, just because I kind of like some other guys in this range. Exactly. So continuing on, Cam Smith, Rory McIlroy, Bryson DeChambeau, Patrick Cantlay, Victor Hovland, and Daniel Berger roll out and finish up the top of the $9,000 range. So who would you start with here of that group of golfers?
Yeah, I like the low 9K range quite a bit. So I think I would start with, believe it or not, Patrick Cantlay. I like him quite a bit. I like Victor Hovland a lot. I mean, I think Victor Hovland has a chance to win this tournament. Speaking of birdie makers, guys that are great off the tee, good ball strikers.
Do you think he'll have the putter back in the bag this week? Is that would generally be a recipe for success, having a putter?
Here I am yesterday with about, a handful of 5 out of 6 teams. Unfortunately, my 6 of 6s were only in cash, so that didn't work out for me. But I have some 4 out of 6s that might cash, and I've got Hovland and Spieth in a lot of those. I mean, imagine what I was feeling. I was feeling
not a great Monday for you.
Not a great Monday, but that was so uncharacteristic of Hovland. But I like him a lot this week. I'm hoping that round gets a few people off of him, because I genuinely think he has a shot to win this thing, and I'm happy to dip all the way down to the 9K range to play some of these guys, including Cantlay and Hovland.
All right, so here's Patrick Cantlay, who, he's been really good. He is a constant gainer off the tee when he gets it going. He's a really good approach player. The putter is fine. He can lose 2, he can gain 2, he can lose 3, he can gain 3. That's generally a recipe for how you win golf tournaments. So Patrick Cantlay is certainly interesting. I played both, and I bet both Rory McIlroy and Bryson DeChambeau this week, and last week, excuse me. And I am such a sucker, I might go right back to those two guys. Let me start with, I guess I'll start with Rory. The idea around this, and I want to go round by round here, is Rory McIlroy in round 2 of the Northern Trust lost 4.8 strokes on approach, Sia. That is basically the worst single approach round of his career. In fact, it is dating back in the last 10 years, 591 measured rounds. He's never been worse than that. So I imagine, one, he's not going to be that bad in any single round this week. And immediately following that round, he kind of fixed it. He was average in round 3 and he gained half a stroke in round 4. That's a reason to be optimistic. And then I got to tell you, I actually doubled down on Bryson last week. I bet him again on Friday night because I loved where the metrics were. His first 2 rounds, he was gaining a ton of strokes on approach. He was gaining off the tee. It looked really, really good. And he had that one really bad round. So I'm a sucker. I'm just I'm a nice guy. I like to forgive and forget, Sia, and quickly forgive. And I will probably go down with those 2 this week.
Yeah, I think I like Bryson a little bit better than Rory. I think the course probably fits Bryson a little bit better, especially if distance is going to trump accuracy. I don't know what to think of Rory. We talked about him a little bit yesterday. I just, one day, the approach is failing. The next day, the putter's failing. Like his ball striking has been great, but I'm a little discouraged with what I saw last week.
Yes. Listen, there's a reason these guys are 9,400, 9,300 when they would normally be $10,400 or $11,400.
Well, that's actually a really good point, because Rory being 9,400, Rory in particular, who is usually in that 10, you are definitely getting savings with a guy that if the ball striking is what it was 2 weeks ago and the weeks prior to that, then you have like an extreme value. So honestly, if you couch it in terms of value, I certainly can't argue with Rory.
9,400 is the cheapest. Well, now I had to look it up. The cheapest Rory McIlroy has been in the last 4 years. That's how long I've been collecting this data. So we have not seen a price this low on Rory. On Bryson, what is he this week? 93? Is that what we said?
Yeah.
9,300. That is the cheapest he's been since the 2020 Players. That event did not finish. Funny story. I woke up that week very much convinced that Bryson was going to win the Players Championship, and I've not felt that way really about anyone since. And of course, that event was canceled, and golf was canceled for 91 days after that. But he was 7,900 at the 2020 Genesis Invitational. That's basically the last time we've seen Bryson this cheap. Interesting.
Wow.
Interesting. Anybody else in this $9,000 range? Berger's down at the bottom. We mentioned Hovland. Tony Finau is this. Listen, Tony Finau, I know it's different courses. Here are his last 4 BMW championships: 7th, 8th, 4th, and 5th. That is like the most classic Tony Finau run of events. Obviously not here in Baltimore, but what do we do with now a guy who just snapped a nearly 2,000-day winning drought?
So I don't want to hold against him the idea that, you can't be a back-to-back winner or do well in back-to-back tournaments. I think he's a good course fit. I don't have a problem with him. And I also don't have a problem starting your DraftKings lineups in this range. Maybe starting with Tony Finau and Victor Hovland, for example, or even going down to Cantlay and Hovland and starting your lineup there if you want to be like super balanced. But I don't mind Finau. I don't think I'm going to play a lot of them, but I'll probably have a couple shares.
Okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to drop down to the 8K range. We're going to find value in this 69-man field. We will take your questions in the chat. Go ahead and throw them in there. But first, we're going to take a quick break and hear a word from our partners.
Let's talk about Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy is the best and easiest way to play season-long best ball. Play more fantasy football without spending all that time on waivers and lineups and trades. Just go to UnderdogFantasy.com or download the app, draft a season-long best ball team, and that's it. No in-season management. And you can take a shot at a $1 million grand prize in their Best Ball Mania tournament. And how about this? You can get a free $25 in bonus cash on Underdog Fantasy if you use the code CBS when you make your first deposit. I love Underdog. It is so easy to use. The mobile app is slick. The website is user-friendly. So do what I've been doing. Go to Underdog Fantasy, join a league, draft a team, and that's it. You're good for the season. Remember, go to UnderdogFantasy.com or the App Store or the Google Play Store, sign up with the code CBS, and get a free $25 in bonus cash. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code CBS.
This episode is brought to you by HP. Whenever you do your best thinking, the HP Spectre X360 is ready when inspiration strikes. With power save for battery life and focus mode to multitask, you can do your best thinking whenever and wherever it happens. You can't always schedule when and where you might have a brilliant thought, whether it's in the morning or before bed, when you're at your computer or away from it. Thinking can happen anywhere and anytime. The HP Spectre X360 2-in-1 convertible PC with Windows 10 saves battery life for whenever an idea hits you. HP Spectre X360, a more thoughtful laptop.
And we're back. The $8,000 range. See, it opens up with Scotty Scheffler, Hideki Matsuyama, and Abraham Ancer. Goes down to Paul Casey, Joaquin Niemann, and Sung Jae Im. It's a very small range of golfers. Is there anything that you like in particular here?
Scheffler, I love at 8,900. I mean, last week he lost a handful, maybe over 3 strokes with the putter, and he was only average on approach. He was excellent off the tee. I expect the putter and the approach game to rebound. I think you're getting a bargain here at 8,900. I mean, we saw just a few tournaments ago, he gained like over 8 strokes with the putter. So he clearly has the ability to pop with the putter. The ball striking is probably going to be there. I don't really see a good argument against Scotty Scheffler. So I'll start there.
The thing that I like with Scheffler, as I kind of just roll through the site here, is he plays really well in strong fields. So the official World Golf Rankings, they do a strength of field number each and every week. It basically says how strong is this field? Are a lot of good players in it? And when you go over 700, that starts to get you into your WGCs, your major championships, all that good stuff, your playoff events. And if you just look at results for players in fields that are stronger than 700, here's the top 6 guys in the last decade. Justin Thomas in this field: Justin Thomas, Brooks Koepka, Dustin Johnson, John Rahm, Hideki Matsuyama. That's a great start. Number 6, Scotty Scheffler. Now he's played less rounds, basically a third of the rounds that those other guys have, but it is really noteworthy how good he has been in really deep fields, big time events.
Yeah. And again, at 8,900 in a 4-day event where you're not getting cut, not that he has, super big cut equity or anything, but, or miscut equity, but I think Scheffler is really up bargaining. I think if you had put him at 9,300 or 9,400 because he had a really good last week, he finished top 10 or something, I don't think anybody would have blinked at that. I think people still would have taken a lot of him. So I'm a big fan of him there. As I scroll down, Sam Burns. I mean, at some point we got to recognize, especially in a no-cut event, this guy is a scorer. I mean, when you're looking at birdie or better gained, birdie or better percentage, whatever you're looking at, in my model, last 36, he's number 7 here. So we know he can score. He can sometimes be a little wayward off the tee. So that, I suppose, can be a problem. But again, you're getting 4 rounds out of him. So it's almost like this. I mean, to me, he seems like Jordan Spieth light a little bit. I think he can really put up some points. And I'm not worried about him missing a cut. And I know he can pop with the putter. So here we go.
That was a very generous assessment of Sam Burns' accuracy with the driver, but he possesses the combination of skills that can pile up birdies. He hits it far. He is top 20 on tour in strokes gained approach, and he's top 20 on tour in strokes gained putting. That is the combination. We talk about it a lot, and he's very good from inside 10 feet and 20 to 25 feet. That 20 to 25 feet range, I hate the buckets. I hate talking about them, but that's where a lot of these birdies come from. Not everybody's stuffing it to 6 feet on every single shot. If you roll those in at a clip like he does, nearly 20%, you're going to make a lot of birdies. And Sia, while we're talking about Sam Burns, Tim in the chat, I'll just call this a 4-round matchup, head-to-head matchup. Sam Burns over Paul Casey. Is that a side that you would take, Burns' side?
Oh, wow. That's a good one. I would probably take Burns because I think he's always going to, well, I shouldn't say always. I think lately he has the upside. And again, I'm getting 4 rounds out of him.
So it depends on how Tim wants to deploy this. I think Burns might have more win equity, but the volatility is sometimes a little bit concerning if you were playing a head-to-head matchup here with Paul Casey. So it depends on, I think, how Tim is going to deploy this. Burns might have more upside, but the floor might be a little bit lower as well. The rest of this $8,000 range, Abraham Ancer has made his first start since his victory. I always like to get that one out of the way. He does not have the distance of some of these other guys, but I'm very interested to see where that goes. And Sung Jae Im, I'm getting the warm and fuzzies again. I think we're starting to see a little bit of the right progression and trajectory for Sung Jae, who has now gained off the tee in 4 straight, including really good driving at the Wyndham and the Northern Trust. He's gained on approach in 3 in a row and 7 of his last 8. The putter, which has shockingly been the issue, getting better, right? He lost 4 strokes in Memphis. He lost a little over 2 at the Wyndham. He only lost less than 1 at the Northern Trust. If he turns that into a 0 or a +1, that's kind of the formula. And he's normally a much better putter than this. I'm not sure what's going on with the flat stick.
Yeah. And he's at least getting better with it over the last 3 tournaments. So yeah, you're right. If he's a 0 putter, I'm pretty excited about him, especially at that price. And honestly, I don't think at this point, Sung Jae is a super sexy pick. So I think ownership percentage, I don't think anybody's going to be super high owned because there's so much talent at the top and in the middle, but I don't think Sung Jae's ownership is going to be very high. And in that case, I think he's an obvious play.
Well, that's a question in the chat. Who do you expect to be the lowest owned in the $8,000 to $9,000 range? So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I love that everyone in the chat just watched me count to 10. 10 golfers in the $8,000 range, Sia. Who do you believe, and I'm going to try to think of this as well, who do you think will be the lowest owned golfer in this range?
So, okay. That's a good one. There's one name that comes to mind. I haven't looked at any preliminary ownership. It's probably Joaquin Niemann.
He was on my short list. He was one of the 2 I narrowed it down to in my head. Why Niemann?
Well, because as good as, I think in theory, Joaquin Niemann makes sense, especially in a 4-day event, but he's not really putting up the scores. He's not putting up the numbers. And if you look at his strokes gain metrics, they're not really that impressive. Last time I think I checked earlier, the approach numbers were pretty pedestrian. And so he's not really doing anything well enough for you to be like, hang your hat on the upside. I think Joakim Niemann is more like a theory guy, and he's just not putting it in practice.
Yeah, I narrowed it down to Niemann and Webb. Niemann is generally, I think the community kind of moves in the same direction on Niemann. I think Simpson, a lot of people were very optimistic about. So a lot of people played him at the Wyndham. They saw that how close he came, and then played him again at the Northern Trust. In fact, he was about 12.5% owned at the Northern Trust, and he didn't really play all that well. And I just think that when you start looking at the guys around him, Connors, who made a run late, Harris English was kind of a safer play. And then you start to get into the bottom. Like, you could make a case for Paul Casey because he's 8,200 and because Sung J M's cheaper and he saves you $100 off of Joakim Niemann. So I think the two lowest are Niemann and Webb.
Yeah, that's fair. I think English could potentially be in that conversation, but I agree with that.
Anybody else in this $8,000 range before I move on?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think we pretty much covered I'll ask you, any thoughts on Hideki at only 8,800?
I have a lot of thoughts on Hideki. I'm not sure what they actually are, though. I love the idea that he is generally overlooked, which is shocking because he is literally one of the best approach players on the planet outside of last week at the Northern Trust. I will probably not get there on Hideki. Unfortunately, he lacks a lot of upside because he can't putt, Sia. Like it's so hard to tap into the upside when you need him to like not lose 3 strokes putting, and it just doesn't happen enough. So I just think he's a casualty of the guys around him. I just like the guys around him a little bit better.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think he's worthy of a couple shares in GPP, though, because at 8,800, it almost seems like that Tony Finau thing where we're like, well, yeah, we don't think Tony Finau can win last week, but he's 8,200. Like, put him in your lineups. He's probably good for a top 5, as a best case scenario. And then there he is actually winning. So I think Hideki has a little bit of that in him this week.
Well, hopefully he does. We'll see. $7,000 range. This is a pretty sizable range considering the field's only 69 golfers. It starts with Shane Lowry, Jason Kokrak, Russell Henley, goes all the way down to Siwoo Kim, Charlie Hoffman, Mav McNeely. There's a lot here. There's a grab bag, young guys, old guys, guys who are playing well, guys who are not. What do you see when you start to assess this $7,000 range?
So the first name that jumped out at me, there were 2 names that jumped out at me at the top. One was Shane Lowry, who I was on pretty heavy last week, and that pretty much worked out. Not the best Sunday, but he was solid like he's been lately. The next name, though, was the name that my eyes got really big. And then I looked at the metrics and I'm like, wait, what's going on with Jason Kokrak?
Jason Kokrak. I knew you were going to say, this is shocking. This is a really stunning turn of events for Kokrak, who, okay, what do we know about Kokrak here in 2021? That he's been a very good driver of the golf ball, and he found this magic putter that led him to 2 victories this season? Look at these metrics. He has, the last 3 events, lost off the tee in all 3. That's shocking considering he is 22nd on tour this year in strokes gained off the tee. He's lost all 3 on approach. Again, shocking considering he's 64th on approach. He's lost in 2 straight with the putter. He's 8th on tour in putting this year. This is like a bizarro world Jason Kokrak situation. So when you see something like this, do you think that he can get back to his DNA, or this is like red flag, red flag, red flag, red flag?
I mean, it's big time red flag, but at the same time, okay, first of all, I feel like this is one of those situations where if it happens again next week, that we're going to find out 2 months from now, like we did with Harris English, like he was nursing some minor injury and he just wasn't right. And then all of a sudden he's good again 6 months from now. So, and by the way, I wish the PGA Tour could just have people disclose injuries and stuff like that so that we don't get into some of these messes right before lock. But with that said, I don't mind. See, I think in a no-cut event, I think Kokrak is at least interesting because he's not going to have to worry about, hey, if I play bad Thursday and Friday, I'm going to get cut. That might relieve some pressure for a guy who's missed 2 cuts in a row. So I'm willing to play him, but boy, does that make me nervous. I'll say this: I am going to play Jason Kokrak, but before. I was going to play him a lot before I looked at these metrics, and I can't ignore what I'm seeing here. So I'm definitely going to be underweight on Jason Kokrak.
I haven't decided yet. I don't know. I'm very concerned. You're right. Not that we're in the business of predicting injuries, but kind of with the Colin Morikawa stuff, where if we found out he had tweaked something, you'd be like, that makes perfect sense because there's really no other explanation for this. The top of that $7,000 range, Russell Henley caught my eye again. Another great approach week, and he has been contention adjacent, I guess, over the past couple of months, right? Describe it what you will. It's a bunch of top 20 finishes. He's been in the lead a couple of times. He has not won, but he's been around it. Lost 6.1 strokes putting last week, which is the second worst putting week he has ever had. I'm going to assume that is not going to happen again, and he's not going to have the worst putting week he's ever had. So I would get back in on Russell Henley. The middle of the $7,000 range, you've got Noren, Keegan, Kevin Na, Sergio Garcia. There's a question in the chat about Erik Van Rooyen. Can he keep the magic beans going? I mean, EVR, a win 3 starts ago, 37th at the Wyndham, 7th at the Northern Trust here. Sia, a confident golfer is a pretty dangerous golfer.
Yeah, that's really impressive. I don't think I'm going to get there with him because I like a lot of guys that are just above him and just below him. I don't have a problem with it, though. I mean, I wish I was on him last week. I certainly wasn't, and he would have completely paid off. But wow, gaining 6.76 with the putter, that's not super promising.
It's also, that's we don't have the advanced metrics because they don't exist from the Barracuda, so we don't know how he won that. But this is not all that of an encouraging stat line. That's 6.7 that he gained on the putting surface last week is the most he's ever gained in a single event, which is not sustainable.
I mean, losing over a stroke on approach, it ain't great. So
it is certainly not. Okay, is there someone here in the mid or low $7,000 range that would catch your attention?
Yeah, so did we talk about him? Maybe you talked about him in the same breath that we were talking about Charlie Hoffman. I think we were talking about Keegan Bradley a little bit last week. I like him. I mean, he gained with the putter last week in a pretty significant way. So I don't think that's necessarily going to happen again. But then again, his ball striking could improve too. I mean, Keegan took some time off before the Northern Trust. And I saw some clips of some interviews. He really, in the interview, he really expressed like he needed that time off. He was really, really tired and he, was coming back refreshed into the FedEx Cup playoffs. So I think we're catching Keegan in sort of an upward trajectory. And I don't mind, even if he's a zero putter, I think the ball striking could improve. And I think he's got a chance here to really pay off his price.
Catching Keegan, that could be like the Saturday night headline or Sunday morning headline as he's like 3 clear of the field, like catching Keegan. Like who's gonna, I don't know. I'll work on that. Thank you. The Charlie Hoffman the $7,000 flat is kind of interesting. His stat line last week was much more reminiscent of what we saw from him in April and May, which I think is kind of intriguing. Let me go through a couple of questions here before I move on to the $6,000 range. Do you have any strong thoughts? This is from Ethan on Johnny Vegas or Kevin Streelman at the bottom of the $7,000 range. Vegas missed the cut at the Northern Trust, 15th place finish at the Wyndham. Before that, he had played well. And then Kevin Streelman made the cut last week, finished 64th.
Yeah, I personally love Johnny Vegas at that price. And I don't really mind the miscut. I mean, he lost off the tee, which is super strange. He's normally just a complete beast off the tee, and he's usually really good on approach. He gained on approach, but not in a significant way. He really lost. He didn't make the cut because of his putter more than anything, but I expect the ball striking numbers to really rebound. I expect the putter to be 0, if not better than 0. So I think coming off a miscut, you're getting a ton of value with Johnny Vegas.
And then John asks an interesting question that I always kind of wrestle with myself. He says, do you consider previous performances at this event, given the levity, the strength of this field, or even though the course changes every time, or at least, we're going to Caves Valley here. So this is the good about it, Sia, is same time of year, same field, strength field. The cons would be that we've never seen anybody play this course before.
Yeah, so I don't really look at previous courses. Previous tournaments if they're on different courses. So I'm not really going to pay attention to that. I think there might be something to be said for people who are sort of like gearing up for the FedEx Cup playoffs and starting to play better. I think Justin Thomas kind of fits into that narrative. I think guys like Webb Simpson might fit into that narrative. Some of these stars, I mean, that's a little bit of narrative shopping there, but I'm not really looking at course history much.
All right, let's go down to the real value in this field, the $6,000 range. And these are some familiar names. It starts with Cam Davis, Mackenzie Hughes, goes all the way down to the min-priced quartet. That's 4, right? Tom Hoagie, Robert Streb, KH Lee, Hudson Swafford, Sia. What do you take from this range?
I wish I could pick out I love picking out a min price guy.
I have one.
Is it Robert Streb?
No, it's not Robert.
Okay.
Streb.
Well, it's got to be Hudson Swafford then, right?
It's Hudson Swafford. Yeah. Listen, here's the case for Hudson Swafford. He's the min price. Let me start there. The other thing is he is kind of a freak. So gained 7.5 strokes off the tee last week, 5.5 on approach. So if you combine that into ball striking, number 1 player in the field at the Northern Trust, it led to a T11. He is horrendous around the greens. Horrendous. His putter is almost as bad, not as bad, but listen, you get 4 rounds from a guy who can ball strike the heck out of it, who is fairly long off the tee on this fairly long course. He offers you the flexibility to roster literally anybody you want. I will be the Hudson Swafford sucker this week.
Yeah, and it's important to point that out that he's min price and he can make your lineup work because it is a 4-day event. So if he has really good ball striking for 2 or 3 of the 4 days, you're probably in really good shape.
Just
even if the
finish T43 and make 1 eagle, and I'm probably happy. Right.
Which is why some of these heavy hitters like make a lot of sense, especially in the 6K range. Like Keith Mitchell is sort of my upgrade to Hudson Swafford. I think he's a guy that can absolutely put up points. He played really well last week, not only really well, but really well down the stretch when he really needed to play well to actually qualify for this tournament. So go ahead, Rick.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say Keith Mitchell is $6,500. He finished 8th last week. He finished 5th at the 3M Open a couple of starts ago.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's definitely, now that I think about it, there's probably a little bit more value in the 6K range because these heavy hitters who are going to have plenty of scoring chances will be playing all 4 days. So I don't mind the Hudson Swafford play. I like Keith Mitchell. A couple of other guys, Rick, I know you'll like Cam Davis at 6,900, right?
Yeah, I mean, you want birdie makers, you want guys that can make eagles. I'm pretty sure Cam Davis leads the tour in eagles. I'd have to confirm that, but it is, you get the upside, you get the guaranteed 4 rounds. I do worry a little bit, and this goes back to our original conversation. Like, is the rough going to be penal? That if we can answer that question, it answers the Cam Davis question a little bit for us. The more penal the rough becomes, the less you can like Cam Davis because he sprays it all over the yard. The less penal the rough is, the more you can like Cam Davis. So as we get reports and maybe some visuals of Caves Valley over the course of the next, I was going to say a couple of days, but really like day and a half, that's going to be noteworthy. So yes, you're never going to hear me complain often about Cam Davis at a good price like that.
Yeah, I think the only other guy I'm interested in here, I mean, Stuart Sink is interesting for the record, but I
don't think he is.
Go. Let's look at the metrics.
All right. So here's my hot take on Stuart Sink is that the 48-year-old has run out of gas in the super season. I just think since his win, since the win at the RBC Heritage, he has one finish inside the top 30. It was last week at the Northern Trust where he gained 7.6 putting, his best performance in a decade. And we're kind of, I don't know. He still has the approach play, which is generally how he got his 2 victories this season. But I'm starting to lose optimism here.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. You've talked me off of Stuart Sink. That was quick.
What else you got? What else can I throw some cold water on?
Here's a guy I want you to. I kind of want you to let me know if you like Aaron Wise.
I've heard that's like the 3rd time somebody's asked me about that. I'm not sure. Let's look together. Okay, so Aaron Wise, a very, very bad putter. In fact, he ranks 188th on tour. Although, to his credit, it's not like Sergio bad where he loses every week. Mm-hmm. There are some weeks he can gain strokes putting. 2.8 at the Wyndham, 2.5 at the Memorial, 3.5 at the PGA Championship, 2.5 at the Honda. He will also lose you 5, Sia, which is certainly something that could come up. Great ball striker. I don't know.
I don't like it.
I'm
I
not
don't
that
like
excited.
Yeah, you've talked me off of that one too. See, I'm really glad we do this show. So that's two guys.
Who else you got? Let's go. Like,
well, the truth is, and I said this at the front end of the show, I don't really like the 6K range. And we did discuss a few guys that I do like Hudson Swafford makes sense. Keith Mitchell, Cam Davis. Outside of that, a lot of these 6K guys, I just don't know that they're going to do the job for you, even though they're going to be playing 4 rounds.
There is one more guy I want to look at, Harry Higgs, because he has back-to-back. I think it's top 15 finishes, and I want to see. Oh boy, when your two top 15s, you lose strokes on approach in both of them. That's like not the greatest thing ever. So he gained 6 strokes around the green at the Northern Trust. Did he chip in like 3 times? That's like what that would be.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. That's not anything to lean on, especially not at this course. At least I don't think it is.
No, dang. That was gonna be someone I was interested in. Munoz, I think, is fine.
I got one more for you though to look up. And by the way, if you're not watching this on YouTube, we got Rick Run Good. He's pulling up the Holy Grail. I think that's right. What you're pulling up, right, Rick?
Yeah, I'm flipping back and forth between the Holy Grail and the golfer profiles. Whatever it takes, see ya.
Whatever it takes. So I want to look into Taylor Gooch, who seems to be everybody's favorite but mine. And not for this week, but for like the last, I don't know, 30 years, it feels like. Everybody's talking about Taylor Gooch, and is he actually performing? I don't know, but wow, those approach numbers look pretty great.
Yeah, that's kind of his weapon is the iron play. So that's 5 events in a row. He's gained at least, I'll round up, 2.5 strokes on approach. Last week, he was great at the Northern Trust. I always think it's interesting when you get a guy who is such a strong approach player, but doesn't hit the driver well, which is kind of Gooch's issue, because those things, they're obviously not identical, but they tend to go together. He's kind of the anti driver with the ball striking ability. So it's kind of interesting. Also to note, we're on bent grass this week. That is one of his better putting surfaces. So he's not a great putter. He's about average, maybe slightly better than average. I just wish he could rein in this driver. If he can rein in the driver, he could probably give himself a lot more looks at birdies.
Yeah. I mean, at 6,200, it's certainly interesting.
Okay. There was one more question I wanted to get to, and I'm looking for it. Oh, this is right up your alley. What is your favorite narrative or storyline this week? Do we have a narrative / storyline this week?
Ooh, well, we can certainly come up with one. I mean, man, at some point, I wish Bryson and Brooks would get grouped together. By the way, that would be a fun story. I don't think there's any real storylines. I mean, usually what I would think of in that regard is somebody like really needing a win, somebody to break out, who's just like we already had that Tony Finau last week. So that
is there anybody from Baltimore? Jordan Spieth and his Under Armour connection? I guess that doesn't really count. Man, that's tough. Producer Jacob's always good at these. I'm staring at the chat to see if he drops any in there, but I'm not sure if there's any storylines or narratives this week.
Storylines for this week? I mean, you got sort of the rematch between Jon Rahm and Dustin Johnson. They were number 1 and number 2 last year at this tournament, and now this year it's flopped. So Rahm is 1, DJ's 2. I mean,
I'll take it.
But that's not interesting because DJ's in a slump, and Rahm's on top of the world right now.
Who needs a win the most? Like, not like FedEx Cup, but like whose career needs a win the most this week? Scheffler?
Yeah, now that Tony's won, I feel like Scheffler's that next guy up as far as who you need to see to win.
Tony and Answer have just accomplished it in like the last 3 weeks. So how about Scheffler? Wouldn't that be the next guy?
Yeah. I mean, I think if you're talking guys who need to actually like get a win, there's some guys towards the top though. Like Daniel Berger won last year, right? So
he won this year. Didn't he win Pebble this year? Was that this February?
Yeah, he won.
That was end of January.
Yep.
That feels like a really long time.
I know. It
ago.
feels like
I guess
like 10 years ago. Yeah.
Fair enough.
I'd like to see Oosthuizen win something instead of coming runner up. But
that's a good one.
Rory McIlroy, I guess he's going to get there's like a chance Rory misses the Tour Championship. He's 28th in the FedEx Cup standings right now. If there's no cut to miss, but if he finished I don't know the math, and it depends on what other people do. But could you imagine if he finished like 51st this week? He's probably going to miss out, right?
Right.
Would that be the first time ever, Jacob? Has he been in the Tour Championship every year?
I think since joining, I can't imagine. I mean, he's been in the top 15 of the. He just dropped out of 15 of the world for the first time since 2009. So I have to imagine that tails in with him being at the Tour Championship.
I would have to imagine that as well. And this is really, I mean, there also is the idea that these 4 rounds are going to decide what the start is for next week at the Tour Championship, which is even more, as we've seen. This is what, Jacob, the third year they're going to do the starting strokes, right?
Yeah, this is third year of that.
Like, they're very, very important. Like, starting 8 under or starting 2 under is the difference between like your chances of winning the Tour Championship or not. So there's going to be a lot of shuffling and a lot of things that matter all week long. I kind of like this.
So I don't have a narrative going in, but I do want to reset the same thing I said at the front end of answering the question, which is this course seems to fit Brooks and Bryson pretty well. Again, we don't have all the information, but I would love to see those 2 guys battling down the stretch and contending on Sunday. I think that would be really cool, and the ratings would be amazing.
The smaller field we get, like the closer we get to it. Like, come on, like there's like once we get down to 30, like there's gotta be, just get these guys together. Jacob, is that a Wawa Cup?
It is a Wawa Cup.
Yes, I love it. I love that.
I guess another sort of going back down narrative street. How much do you sort of weigh, guys who are on this bubble of the top 30 line? I mean, is that an indication to maybe play this 31 through 37, 40 range more?
Yeah, what do you think, Sia? Would you break ties with it? I mean, these guys all have incentive, but they know it, right? We kind of heard Keith Mitchell allude to this at the end of or in his interview on Monday, where he knew exactly where he was. He knew what he needed to do, and he knew he wasn't going to leave putts short and things like that. And for Mitchell to make 3 birdies in a row is very valuable in fantasy, and it's also the birdie streak, right? So, like, at what point do you start to consider 31 through 41?
I consider it I could go up to like maybe 27, 26, right? Because those guys are on the line and need to play well, like Charlie Hoffman, Max Homa, for example. But I think I consider it, but not to add a player to my pool. I think, like, when I see Keegan here at 32, I think, I already liked Keegan. I already liked Charlie Hoffman. I just might add a couple more shares. And again, that assumes that the stress level related to making the top 30 actually benefits these guys. But when it comes to Charlie Hoffman and Keegan specifically, they didn't play a lot of golf over the last couple of months. And so to me, that might mean that they were sort of like kind of resting and prepping for this FedEx Cup playoffs. And it's a home run from a narrative standpoint, because I think they're geared up for this.
Okay. I love it. Jacob, we are going to be back in like an hour and a half, right? We're doing a second First Cut pod today.
Yes. So on YouTube, if you're watching live right now, come back at 5:30 Eastern. We'll have our mega preview coming up. And if you're listening on the audio form, they'll be dropping right next to each other. So Wednesday, you can go back to back. I think this is like our equivalent of like playing 36 holes in one day of split tees, threesomes. We're just going to run it straight back.
Run it right back. That's producer Jacob, not only doing all the hard work behind the scenes, but in front of the scenes. Oh, there he goes. Thank you very much, producer Jacob. Sia Nejad, who you can find on Twitter at Sia Nejad, and you can find me at Rick Run Good. This has been the First Cut, and we'll catch you next time.
Do not miss the biggest and best fantasy football event of the year. I'm talking about the 2021 Fantasy Football Today Draftathon supporting St. Jude. It's on September 1st from 6 p.m. until midnight Eastern. It's 6 hours of nonstop fantasy football advice with 30-plus industry guests. You will hear from the best fantasy analysts out there. We've got draft prep, trivia, fan questions, and much more. And the most important part, we're raising money for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. Watch the first 2 hours on CBS Sports HQ and the entire event on the Fantasy Football Today YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/fantasyfootballtoday. We will see you September 1st at 6 p.m. Eastern for 6 hours of fantasy football talk.